Hey, this is Joel. Thanks for checking out this video. I wanted to show you a trick that I did recently when mixing some material that had been given to me and that had drum tracks that had one room mic, a mono room mic, rather than a stereo room mic, and I wanted it to sound stereo. So to demonstrate what I did to accomplish that, I've got these same drum tracks that I've used for several drum videos now, and I'm just going to kind of show you how I did this. First, I'm going to show you what the drums sound like, this set of drums, with actual stereo room mics, just so you can kind of get a feel for what they sound like. And here's the stereo room mic track. And that's the drums with no reverb, that's just the closed mics. And that's the room mics. Now there's processing on those room mics. Got some pretty heavy compression happening, having first been wound up with some low end added to EQ. Makes it really big and bombastic. But that's stereo. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is what I did here to do a mono track. And if you take a look at the tracks here, this is on this big fat track here is the stereo track, and here is the mono track, which is just half of the stereo track. All I did was just drag half of it down to make it stereo, and this is what it sounds like stereo mixed in. I'm still using the EQ, a little bit different shape on it for a reason I'll show you in a little bit, and heavy compression. So that's mono versus stereo. Okay, so you can see the difference. I mean, the mono still sounds cool, and it can sound very cool in a mix when you've got a lot of other mono elements that have been hard panned left and right to create this sort of artificial stereo soundscape, and you're not looking for a natural soundscape. But if you are looking for something natural, stereo mics are really, really nice. So how do you fake that? Okay, I've seen other videos where people typically, what people seem to do the most is one of two things. They either play around with the Haas effect, which you can Google what that is, H-A-A-S, basically using a mono to stereo delay, putting a stereo delay on it by a few milliseconds difference between the left and right. The problem with that is it doesn't really sound totally natural. It's very wide. One side tends to wind up sounding like it's hitting your ear before the other, which is actually how the Haas effect works. So it's a directional thing, so it makes everything feel off kilter, so I'm not a big fan of that. Plus, it just kind of twists my head off, and anytime I'm real sensitive to sort of out of phase material like that, where you start just kind of playing with the timing of stuff like that. I'm real sensitive to that. It doesn't feel natural to me at all. So I try to avoid that. The other way that people tend to do it is they tend to stick it through 100% wet through a stereo reverb set to a very, very short reverb time, a very short decay. The problem with that is most every reverb plugin that you're going to use is going to wind up making it sound puffy and smeared. You'll lose all of the attack. If you listen to room mics alone, there's a lot of attack there. I mean, if I get rid of this compressor, hear that attack? I mean, it's 10, 15 feet away from the drums, but it's still a transient thing. So room mics they have attack, and if you put something 100% through a reverb, it tends to just remove all the attack, and it just becomes this ambient effect, which really just sounds like you're putting reverb on the drums kind of from a different perspective, rather than using sends, aux sends on a snare drum and on overheads and on toms and the various tracks. You're just using a room mic basically, but it still sounds like reverb. It just has a different frequency content than if you used aux sends. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. I'm getting long-winded. Let me cut to the chase here. So what I've done is I have done something similar to create. Well, let me first just show you my what it sounds like with my fake stereo here. That's my stereoized mono track. Okay, and for comparison, we'll listen to the actual stereo track, which sounds more natural. but doesn't necessarily sound better. Kind of six of one, half dozen of another. It's really more of a preference. This sounds a bit more spacious to me. So if the mix is a little denser, has more guitar tracks, more layers of other instruments and stuff, this might be the way to go anyway. Even if you have stereo tracks, you might want to do something like this trick to make it a little bit more exaggerated. Okay, so what did I do? I generally have been, for all the videos that I've done so far, I've been using all the plugins that come with Pro Tools because I'm really not one of those people who says you have to go out and buy stuff. You got to go buy plugins to do good engineering. I will, however, plug, no pun intended, one plugin, and that is this one right here, which a lot of people kind of poo-pooed because it was, it's an oldie, but it's a goodie. Waves TrueVerb. I think it's the first reverb they ever had. Came out back around, I don't know, sometime in the 90s, I guess 20 years ago. The thing that makes this work so well for me, and I'll go up here and kill this delay, and I'll show you just what this is doing by itself, is the fact that you have control over the level of the direct signal, the early reflection, and the actual reverb content. Reverb being that, which I just use a little bit. And this, by the way, this is a preset that I created. It's called Mono to Stereo Room. And I will I'll make it downloadable. So go check out my website, joelcameron.com, and I will make this preset downloadable. Waves, by the way, this TrueVerb, it's super inexpensive. I think if they sell it straight up retail, it's $99. But they're always having it on sale for like $50 or even less. I think it was on sale for $39 recently. So I don't want to speak for Waves, but generally they do have it on sale a lot. So you can generally pick it up pretty cheap. And this really makes it a genius plugin because what's so cool about it, as you listen to it, it sounds stereo, but you still have the attack. And if I bypass it, that makes a pretty huge difference. Now what I've done, and that actually in the mix sounds good. And not altogether unlike the original sound. But I did go one step further, and I'll just show you what I did here, and that is I then inserted this mono to stereo delay, or I guess actually it's a stereo delay because it's coming after a stereo plugin, but it's basically just delaying one side though. 15 milliseconds. There's no modulation or anything. It's just a straight up 15 millisecond delay, 100% wet on this side. It's 100% dry on this side. So you're just getting the straight right channel and the left channel's being delayed. Now that makes it, when it's soloed, sound a little screwy. And that's kind of that weird, it's not quite the Haas effect because it's 15 milliseconds, but that does make it sound a little screwier. But in a mix, it just sounds wider, which can be really nice. And you could actually put this delay, if you wanted to, over a straight stereo pair just to make them feel wider. But that is a mono track. That's made stereo. And again, the thing that you need to focus on, regardless of whatever plugins you use, is that you don't lose the attack content of the room mic. And just real quick, I'll touch on the CQ because I said I would. If you look at the difference between the actual room mics and this here, I've boosted the top end because even though you do preserve some of the attack, the frequency content changes. It becomes much more dull. And I wanted to kind of restore a little bit of that clarity to accentuate the attack a little bit more. So I added some here and I pulled out a little bit of low mid to kind of compensate. Anyway, but that's it. I hope that's useful. I hope I didn't get too long-winded. Feel free to ask questions or leave comments below. And please check out my blog at joelcameron.com. And I do appreciate you for watching. Thanks.